Welcome to Butterfield Backstage Banter, the BSP podcast where host Jessica DeMent is joined backstage by her guests to banter about theater at Butterfield in Gainesville, Texas.
Hello, and thank you to Butterfield Backstage Banter. I am your host, Jessica DeMent, and today I am joined by Mandy Rausch, who is our intimacy director for the Wolves. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell me a little bit about your background in theater?
Of course. I auditioned for my very first show when I was in the 8th grade, I believe. I stood on the stage of what is the campus theater in Denton, Texas, and sang Edelweiss with my eyes squeezed tightly closed. Since then, I have done a lot of community theater, a lot of regional, not regional, but amateur and professional theater, and less acting these days. I did my first play as an actor in 5 years just this past summer because I have been busy teaching, directing theater, and doing intimacy and fight direction, which I've been doing now since 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the short version.
Yeah, that's a short version. It sounds like it. I think those of us who've been in theater for a while have our short version and our extended version of our history. Can you talk to me a little bit about what role an intimacy director serves in a play?
Absolutely. The shortest way to say it is that we are there to make the process safe and tell really dynamic physical stories while respecting actor boundaries, all actor boundaries in a consent-based and trauma-informed environment. So just being able to tell those stories the same way you would approach a physically violent scene in a play. We would never give two actors swords and say, just try something and see what works. But we've done it forever with kissing or other types of touch or intimacy or even strong language. And we've seen real long-term effects on emotional and mental well-being from not taking care of actors that way. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, there are terrible stories about, things that have gone really wrong, people being assaulted, and things like that. So we just want to tell the strongest stories possible and empower actors to advocate for themselves and tell the strongest story that is possible within their boundaries.
That's such a wonderful role to serve.
It's great.
Can we talk a little bit about how an intimacy director goes beyond just like those romantic scenes? Because I think most people probably hear that word intimacy and think more of like physical romance. But I know that as an intimacy director, it's much more than that, even just a little bit of what you talked about just now. Mm-hmm. So can you expound on that a bit?
Absolutely. I've even been called in to do like Romeo and Juliet. It was cast with older actors, with Plague Mask players, where they cast them as retirees age. And I was called in, obviously, to work the love scenes, but also to work the grief. There's an intimacy of grief. There is an intimacy of friendship and vulnerability. Intimacy is vulnerability. True intimacy requires vulnerability in our relationships and on stage. And so it's not always about the romance or the more sensual things. It's about what is a place where the material is charged emotionally. And that can be charged with anger, charged with sadness, charged with grief, charged with fear, any of those strong emotions that might take you out of yourself and keep you from doing your job well. The moment you think of what's happening on stage, you are no longer embodying that character. Mm-hmm. So my job is to get it into a place of choreography where it just feels like the same thing you would do in a musical. So you do a time step here, you put your hand here and here, you do this, it's the same thing, but it's more with emotionally charged things. But we also serve to advocate for and teach actors to advocate for themselves. Because you and I are probably of the same generation where we were afraid to say no to anybody. Because we've been told, especially as women, that there's a line of people out the door ready to replace us.
Yeah.
So
you don't do it, someone else will.
Someone else will, right? Yeah. And that person will because they are afraid to say no as well. Mm-hmm. So there have been consequences to saying no to anything. So, but also just to teach, and we'll get into this more when we talk about the content of this production, but taking care of actors and teaching them to come in, do their job, and not take the story into their own bodies so much that they can't then put it away and go home. Mm-hmm. So even just teaching de-rolling And this show deals with teens and some really important issues. And so we want to be able to say, I'm not a therapist or a licensed psychiatrist, but I can give you those resources.
Yeah.
And a lot of me and my colleagues are certified in mental health first aid as well, for adults and for youth.
Sounds like it would be important with some of the
Absolutely.
areas that you're exploring.
Yeah, just knowing what to do when somebody starts to shut down or protect themselves. That is a nature of the role that I don't think people realize is necessary.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't even say necessary, highly beneficial. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the intimacy director role for this show and some of the ways that that is played into the Wolves and coming up. I know there's a lot of heavy topics like we've mentioned, and it's dealing with teens. So let's expound on that a bit.
Well, in working with the majority of the cast who are quite young, some of them are even still in high school or right out of high school, teaching them how to deal with these big emotions that their characters are experiencing. But then literally some of our de-rolling techniques include things like me teaching them to say, as the character, I did this, as me, myself, because I'm even playing the soccer mom and she has a quite emotionally charged moment. And even when I'm rehearsing it, I have to go, okay, this isn't happening in my real life. And I have to actively say, as an actor, this is what I'm doing to play this emotion. Myself, I am healthy, I am okay, I am safe. So these techniques and teaching them how to do that.
Yeah.
And reminding them that they are telling stories and that you never have to embody an emotion truly or experience trauma to play a role well.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds like such incredibly important work. And I'm just thinking back to some of the roles I played in my earlier years, my teen years. I used to do pretty much strictly drama. So I had some heavier stuff, some heavy monologues and things like that. And I didn't have any of those tools. And I'm just thinking, wow, as a teenager, now as an adult, who's like done healing work and things like that, like I can separate out myself from my roles and do kind of like you were talking about, but I certainly couldn't do that at 15, 16, 17 years
old. That doesn't
old,
come naturally to most teenagers.
Yeah.
And I teach them as well. And so I even see them in the high schools and at my job doing UIL events where I see these students telling these intense stories. And I'm like, who's taking care of you on the bus ride home?
Yeah.
What are you doing to take care of yourself? As I'm being paid to judge these UIL events, I'm like, how can I be? What are you doing to de-roll from this? So yeah, it's really, really important. And it's hard because like I said, even as someone who's trained to do this, I did the Glass Menagerie once 10 years ago or more, and I would drive home just so sad every night after playing Laura, poor little Laura. So it's hard. It's hard to shake it.
Yeah.
But yeah, having those tools in your toolbox is invaluable.
Absolutely. I can imagine that some of those tools even have real world applications too, beyond just in the theater, which is highly beneficial to have.
Absolutely. Even just saying like, this is what I had to do today. This isn't mine. What am I holding of the role? What am I holding of what this person came in? Even as a teacher, when the students come in and they're highly charged and they leave and I'm like, okay, this was theirs. Yeah. This was theirs. This is not mine. Yeah. And it's the same thing with acting. This is my character. This is what they did. This is not what I'm going through in my life.
This is what I had to pick up in the process, but it's not mine.
But I'm putting it down and leaving it there.
Put it down.
100%. Yes.
That's amazing. Amazing work.
And it takes practice. It takes practice just like any other part of our craft as actors.
Absolutely. What are some of the challenges that an intimacy director would face?
Burnout is one. Because you do have to hold space for other people. So you have to take care of yourself before you get in the room. And then again, when you leave it. So I am guilty of taking on too many roles and too many jobs that overlap. And there'll be a point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm even serving these actors because I'm a sponge that is too full. So taking care of yourself is really difficult. You have to think in the moment. You have to be ready to pivot because we don't pre-choreograph. We don't need to know these actors' histories or boundaries, or we do need to know their boundaries, but we don't need to know their why. Yeah. So someone says, don't touch my neck because one time and I'm like, we don't need to, because you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me, but still dealing with things that might even trigger us and having to say, okay, and move without them taking that, feeling like they're making you feel bad. So also just work. You can't pre-choreograph things like this. You can't, like a choreographer for a musical might have every count planned before he or she comes into rehearsal. I can't do that because bodies move so differently together in real space. And then you also bring in the boundaries and things that happen in the moment that arise and activate us. And so just being quick on your feet and then making sure that we leave it as well.
Yeah.
It can be really difficult.
It sounds like
Yeah.
it. Sounds like a lot, especially if you're not being mindful to protect yourself and not, overload. Pick up all the things and not set them back down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. What are some tips that you would give to an actor who's maybe struggling in a play with intimacy moments? And what are some things that maybe you would help give them as advice or tips? Sometimes maybe in the moment, or exercises that they would do outside, away from rehearsals?
Well, first of all, in rehearsals, we have to just teach people to speak up. And it doesn't have to be a moment where you stop the rehearsal and make it, because actors don't want to do that, especially younger actors. They don't want to stop and make it all about them and feel like all eyes are on them. Adults don't have that problem as often, but especially actor adults. But speak up. And even if speaking up means on a break, going and talking to your director or your stage manager and saying, I just can't, I'm having trouble with this. Do you have the skills, or can we bring in an intimacy director? The answer is almost always yes, because most of the people who work in my field will come in and help. I mean, not everybody has the budget, and some people charge more than others, but there's always, I think, going to be somebody who's going to say, yes, let me come in, or even get on the phone with the director and say, here's what I would recommend. So, and just being aware and paying attention to and validating the feelings that you're feeling in your body, and not brushing it off as being, oh, well, this is what good actors do, or this is part of the suffering I have to have as an actor. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to suffer for your art. We do.
We do, yes.
But there are things that we can do that we don't have to do anymore, that are part of an old narrative.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. What are some tips or advice you would give to somebody who maybe is wanting to pursue becoming an intimacy director?
I would say just start looking for some of the organizations that offer trainings and workshops, and just start following them on social media. There are more groups now, and they all have their own processes. Right now, there's only one organization that offers a certification, but that is not codified across the industry yet, like it is for fight directors. So do not think that certification is the only way to go. It is a way to go. But start taking just a best practices class, or buy a book. There's a book that's called Staging Sex that just has even the vocabulary. Maybe don't keep it in your classroom if you're an educator, or keep it hidden. But it has so much vocabulary in it that's even helpful to actors. And I know the women who wrote it. They're incredible human beings. Just start getting out there. There's no right way to do it, I don't think. Just wanting to do it and wanting to be a part of being better is better. Yeah,
that's awesome. Do you have a website or social media page that we could direct people to if they're looking to get in touch with an intimacy director?
I do, but I don't give that out. That's my boundary.
Okay.
I don't have a website, and I don't like to give out my social media, but you can email me and we can maybe put it in the information. It's just my first name dot last name @gmail.com. And I answer emails within 24 to 48 hours. And most of the time I can at least get you in the right direction, even if I can't take on a project myself. But yeah, absolutely reach out to me via email. I don't really have a website. It's not a place where I need to be just now. Eventually I might, when I become so popular that I need to have a specific social media. But for now, those are personal, and I keep those.
Absolutely. I can respect that. Well, I will definitely share your email address in the information box. So if anybody's looking or just has more questions.
I love to answer questions about this. Yes.
Wonderful. And for my last question, can you please tell our audience why you think they should definitely not miss this show?
I've been dying to answer this question. Because we don't tell young girls stories enough. How many plays can you think of that tell young girls stories? There aren't many.
Not many.
There aren't many plays that tell women's stories, or they're women of a very specific trope or age or experiencing something that has to do with men. And this play is just about these teen girls and very real issues that are very important to them. And we're giving those people a voice. So you are going to watch this show, and someone in your life that you know of is going to flash through your brain, and you're going to get a little window into her mind. And I think that we need more stories like this.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
I am so thankful to have you on, and very much enjoyed talking about the intimacy directing with you.
I could talk about it all day, so I have to rein it in.
That is fair. Maybe one day I'll have you back on the podcast. We can talk even more. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching today. If you want to come see this very important show, make sure to get your tickets online at butterfieldstage.org or call our box office. All the information will be below in the information box, including the email address. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with all your friends. And we will see y'all at the theater. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. For more information, please visit butterfieldstage.org.